All right, guys. Sorry about that. My recording went off, so I'm going to try to pick up where I think it left off. So the last thing I was talking about is at this point right here, you have to choose whether you're going to solve for angle A or angle B. And technically you could do either, but sometimes you're going to get it wrong if you were to choose the one that would be obtuse. You would never know that. So we're always like down here, we're going to choose the smaller one. So because I have big C and little c, I'm going to use the law of sines with that. And here I am down here, I set it up. So I can say the sine of angle C over little c, right here, equals the sine of angle B, which is what I'm going to find, over little b, 28. And then this becomes, we're solving this exactly the same way that we've done for the last two homeworks. You're just going to cross multiply and solve. Now, this I'm solving for an angle, so hopefully you remember. That means you're going to be using inverse. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this 28 up here. So it becomes 28 times the sine of 62 over 30.5 equals the sine of B. And now this is going to go on the other side as the inverse. And that's going to get me angle B. Now, you guys can write inverse sine. That would be something I would be okay with you guys just doing on your calculators. So like, I'm just going to do this on my calculator right now. So now remember, I brought this over as inverse sine. So that's where I'm going to have to start. So second sine of this, 28 times the sine of 62 and the parentheses divided by 30.5 gives me 54.2. And that's that angle, 54.2. Okay. So now I can put that in here, 54.2. And now you can just subtract those two from 180 to get angle A. So like I said before, you're always going to get the biggest angle by subtracting the two you found from 180. So that's why we always want to do that last. Biggest angle always last. Okay, so we have 180. If we subtract this 54.2 and we subtract 62, that will give me your final answer here, 63.8. And now you've completed that triangle. And that one's done. This is the easier version of the problem. Like I said, when we started off this problem, you have a choice. You're either going to find a side or you're going to find an angle. Whenever the side is what you're trying to find, it's easy because it's all calculator. You know, if I'm finding the side, I can put this whole thing in my calculator, take the square root of it, and that'll give me the side, and then I just go to the law of sines from there. The next one we're going to do is going to be the harder version. That's going to be where I give you the side, and you're going to have to find the angle. All right, so like I said, this one's going to be a little bit more difficult. All right, so example 2. We got A is 11, B is 4, and C is 8. All right, so let's get that triangle drawn. So we got A, B, C. Little a is 11, B is 4, C is 8. Okay. All right, so first thing I hope you recognize is you weren't given an angle at all. You have no angle. So going back to these notes, I said you were going to choose which formula based on the angle that you're given. If you're not given an angle, you then have to make a decision on which angle do you want to solve for. So we're still going to follow this pattern. If given a choice of finding, I guess in this case you could find any three angles, always choose the smaller one. So we're going to look here, and if I just look at this triangle, I know the smallest angle up here is B because it's opposite the smallest side. I know the biggest angle is A. That's opposite the biggest side. So that will be the one I don't solve for. I'll get A by finding first B and C, like in the last problem, and subtracting them from 180. So A, you're not going to do anything with A. All right, so since I've decided that I'm going to find B, B is going to be the guy I'm going to find, I'm going to need the B formula. So you guys are going to have to go off of the B version of the formula we said. So that would be this. B squared equals, and then it's going to end with, remember, the cosine of B. Everything else is going to be a and c. So it's a squared plus c squared minus 2ac. Starts, ends always with the same letter, and that letter being whatever angle you have, or in this case, angle you're going to find. So we're finding angle B. All right, let me plug everything in. So b squared is 4, so I have 4 squared here. 4 squared equals a is 11 plus c is 8 squared minus 2 times 11 times 8 times the cosine of b, and that's what I'm finding. You're finding the angle B. Now, like every bit of trig you guys have done, to find an angle, you're going to have to do the inverse. Now, you can't do that yet. You got a lot of math here to do first. So let's start cleaning this up and see what we got. So 4 squared is 16 equals 11 squared is 121, 8 squared is 64, minus 2 times 11 times 8. Let me just put that in here. 2 times 11 times 8 is 176 times the cosine of B. All right, so right off the bat, I will show you right now, you've got to remember the number one mistake people make here. You cannot combine these three numbers, 121, 64, and then minus 176. That 176 is connected to the cosine of B. That's 176 times the cosine of B. The only way that's going is if you divide it away. Now, these two you can combine. So I'm going to go ahead and combine them. And here's what I have. 121 plus 64 is 185 minus 176 cosine of B. So that'll always be what happens. You'll combine these two, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get this term by itself by subtracting that away. So these first two that you square, you'll add them together and then always subtract them over. So I'm going to subtract the 185 over to that side. So I got 16 minus 185 is negative 169. So I'm at negative 169 equals. Now, don't forget this. People lose this all the time. You will get the wrong answer if you do. So it's a negative 176 times the cosine of B. These steps will be the same steps every time. Now, to get the cosine of B by itself, you're going to divide away this negative 176. So divide it over there. And here's where I'm at. Cosine of B equals, they'll never divide evenly, so don't worry about dividing it. Just leave it as the fraction. Now I'm going to write it as a positive because a negative divided by negative is a positive. 169 over 176. And now you're just like we were in the last problem. To solve for an angle, you're going to use inverse. So I'm going to put this on the other side as its inverse. And now I'm just going to go to my calculator. Angle B equals. So I'm over here on the calculator. I need the inverse cosine of this, second cos of this fraction. And I get 16.2. All right, there's the first angle. So angle B is 16.2. So we put that in our triangle up here. And now you're done with the law of cosines. Now you're back to the law of sines again because you had both B's. So we're going to do law of sines to either find angle A or angle C. Now remember, you don't really have a choice because if you do the law of sines right now to find angle A,